Hello, good day, my football encyclopedia fans all over the world. Yeah, my name is Alexander Ojimba, and today's topic is going to be Tony Yeboah is the Ghanaian international pearl. That's Tony Yeboah right there. I called him the Ghanaian international pearl. Now, when someone calls you a pearl, it means that you're the very best. You're a shining light. So, I say it again, Tony Yeboah is the Ghanaian international football pearl. 100%. Now, when I first saw Tony Yeboah playing football in the Premier League, I didn't really know who Tony Yeboah was. So we're talking about maybe in the 90s here. And I had to do my research, and I found out that Tony Yeboah is a Ghanaian football international that played his football, he started his professional European career in Frankfurt of Germany. That's a German Division 1 club. So when Tony Yeboah himself came into the Premier League, I was very interested to see what this footballer was all about. So I discovered that as Tony Yeboah played 2 or 3 games for Leeds United, I watched him very closely. I realized that Tony Yeboah himself is a predominantly left-footed striker. He's a predominantly left-footed striker. And that's Tony Yeboah scoring incredible goals, top-class goals for Leeds United. So Tony Yeboah, as far as I'm concerned, is a top professional. So when I say Tony Yeboah is a top professional, he's not one of these professionals that come over and they're just interested in getting paid. They're just interested in the money, and they give like half decent efforts. Tony Yeboah wasn't like that. Tony Yeboah came to prove himself in the Premier League. And if you was to ask me the question, did Tony Yeboah actually prove himself in the Premier League? I will say 100% yes. Is Tony Yeboah one of the best African footballers to ever play in the Premier League? I would even say top 5. He's one of the top 5 African players or strikers to play in the Premier League. Not only was Tony Yeboah the Ghanaian international who played for Leeds, a top professional, but Tony Yeboah also was in top physical condition. Top physical condition means a lot, because it means you're physically fit, you're ready to do a job for the team. I'm not talking about just being a good player and giving 20% of your ability. No. When I say Tony Yeboah was in top physical condition, Even the fans can feel it. Even the fans can feel it. That's why the commentator himself will scream, Yeboah! Yeboah! When he scored those ridiculous goals, the commentator will scream, Yeboah! Why? Because the man's in top physical condition, a top professional. It's funny because before Tony Yeboah came to the Premier League, Leeds was also in the old English First Division. So before the Premier League became the Premier League, if you don't know, it was called the English First Division. And Leeds United had a striker who scored a lot of goals for them. And his name is Lee Chapman. Go and do your research, man. Lee scored a lot of goals for Leeds. And Lee was on the verge of getting an England international call-up in those days. Lee Chapman was known for his heading ability. He was known for being brave. He didn't mind getting injured. He was scoring goals upon goals. But the biggest compliment I can give Lee Chapman is that he didn't break into the England team because England had the great Gary Lineker at the time. So when Lee Chapman was scoring all those goals for Leeds in the English First Division, when he retired, it looked like it was going to be impossible to replace Lee Chapman. So here comes the great Eric Cantona, and here comes the great Tony Yeboah. But I'm here to say that Tony Yeboah is just one of those strikers that took Lee Chapman's striking, sensational position. Has Leeds United replaced Tony Yeboah, this African great, sensational striker? I don't think so. There's only one Tony Yeboah. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe Leeds signing Tony Yeboah at the time when they signed him was a risk. Because at that time, there was not too many African strikers in the Premier League. Obviously, Tony Yeboah must have been proven in the Bundesliga, but it was still a risk for Leeds to sign Tony Yeboah. It was a big, massive risk, but it was a risk that really was worth taking. That risk was really worth taking because Tony Yeboah turned out to be a great sharpshooter. So as a striker, Tony Yeboah is not into the dribbling and the passing. He's into the finishing with his predominant left foot. He's a sharpshooter. And that's what matters because it's goals that win games. And when you sign a striker to come and win the game for you. So Tony Yeboah is predominantly a goal machine and a sharpshooter. I would even say that Tony Yeboah, the Premier League might not want to say it, but I will say in terms of all the strikers that have played in the Premier League, I'll go as far as saying Tony Yeboah has got the most powerful shot, the most powerful and the most accurate sharpshooter in Premier League history. I'll give it to Mr. Tony Yeboah, the brilliant Yeboah. Tony Yeboah was really, really deadly. Indeed, he's a deadly striker. So that means if you give Tony Yeboah the ball with one on the turn, he could even score on the turn. It's a goal. Yeboah! Yeboah! Tony Yeboah. The unforgettable Tony Yeboah. Don't matter if you're Nigerian, don't matter if you're Cameroonian, it don't matter if you're Colombian. Quality and success is success. And that's what Tony Yeboah brought to the Premier League. So Tony Yeboah was definitely a deadly striker, indeed. I don't want to use the word world-class striker too much, but it's got to be said that Tony Yeboah is definitely 100% a world-class striker. There's no doubt in my mind. This man is a world-class striker. As far as the Premier League is concerned, Tony Yeboah is one of the best strikers that the Premier League has ever seen. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong in the comments. Prove me wrong. A world-class striker. And Yeboah also knew his job. His job was to put the ball in the back of the net. That's what matters. No one done it ever better than Yeboah. Tony Yeboah was a man, a striker, that was really hungry for goals. I'd even go as far as saying Tony Yeboah is the best striker football striker in Leeds FC's football history. Prove me wrong. Leeds FC should have the statue of Tony Yeboah. I've been to 85% of the cities in England. For instance, if you go to Nottingham Forest, in the city there, they got the statue of, not Nigel Clough, Brian Clough. They got the statue of Brian Clough like that because they know what Brian Clough has brought to the Nottingham City. They know the success that Brian Clough brought to Nottingham as a city. And on the other hand, I'm saying that Leeds should have the statue of Tony Yeboah, without a doubt. I said it. Leeds should have the statue of Tony Yeboah. Tony Yeboah himself scored the most exciting goals that the Premier League has ever seen. Chest, fire, bang, 35 yards. Crossbar, ground, crossbar, bang, crossbar, bang, ground, and in the net. Yeboah! Ask David James. Liverpool versus Leeds. Don't know what year it was. 35 yards. Tony Yeboah is an exciting striker. What a goal machine. The Premier League has never seen a striker like Tony Yeboah. So that's credit to Ghana and that's credit to Africa as well for producing a striking legend called Tony Yeboah. Tony Yeboah definitely made Africa proud, 100%, with his Premier League goals. He made Africa proud with his Premier League goals. Who can forget? In today's football market, Tony Yeboah would be worth nothing less than £200 million, without a doubt. Prove me wrong. Tony Yeboah would be worth £200 million in today's football market. So Tony Yeboah, as far as I'm concerned, is simply a great global striker. And as far as I'm concerned, Yeboah is all about goals. And that's how a striker should go about his business. It's not about to look good or to look fancy. No, it's about hitting the nets. And that's what Tony Yeboah done. A remarkable legend, Tony Yeboah. He was all about goals. Tony Yeboah is the best Ghanaian player to ever play in the Premier League. Today you got players like Kudos of Tottenham. And you got that one that plays for, is it Bournemouth? Can't remember his name. Platts. They're not as good as Tony Yeboah. No way. Apparently, they have to learn from Tony Yeboah. They have to learn from Tony Yeboah. Kudos, the Ghanaian footballer, international Ghanaian footballer that plays for Tottenham. And the other one that plays for Bournemouth, I can't remember that guy's name. They're not as good as the Mercurial Tony Yeboah. Tony Yeboah is the best Ghanaian player, striker, to ever play in the Premier League. I just want to say Tony Yeboah, or King Tony Yeboah. King Tony Yeboah. Let's say King Tony Yeboah. King Tony Yeboah, the football encyclopedia. This is the home of global football. Salutes you. Yeah? That's right.